Here.
Voorhees.
Yo.
Coe. Here. Goldes.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Steck. Check. Hershey.
Here.
So I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any agenda changes? I think we covered that. Are there any conflicts of interest we have tonight? Or anything on the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No.
Citizens appearing before council, please, if you have anything to comment on things that are not on the agenda, please come up and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for council comments.
Just curious.
I have a quick one. Today I went to Carbondale and was able to participate with youth from Aspen to pretty much down the valley and stuff like that. We had Glenwood Springs and stuff on their Healthy Rivers seminar today, and I'm just amazed at all of those kids and what they know and what they bring to the table to talk about. And that was a really fascinating part, or a great part about that whole thing, is the engagement with other community leaders, with the kids talking one-on-one. So I just really appreciate that that opportunity was out there for these guys.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Rick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 8, Hanging Lake Technical Assistance Steering Committee.
Okay.
Oh,
The
that's
city,
you.
what?
That's you?
Yes, that's me.
Good.
The city applied for technical assistance to integrate the Hanging Lake Shuttle system into downtown, with the idea that we have 615 people coming every day. How do we make sure they're visiting downtown? The presentation Ken's going to show you in a little bit. We'll kind of show you how we're doing with that now, but we think there's room for improvement. As part of this process, there is supposed to be a steering committee, and I'm asking you guys to formally appoint one. My suggestions are Ken Murphy, Lisa Langer, Marcia Gills, who is, or whoever the White River National Forest would like to appoint. Steve Beckley as an owner of Iron Mountain Hot Springs. Katie Gazunas as the executive director of the Garfield County Housing Authority, because part of this is also looking at affordable housing. Is how do you integrate, like how do we house all of our employees? Christian Henney, the general manager of the Hotel Colorado and a DDA member. Laura Kirk, the executive director of the DDA. Jim New, a downtown resident and local attorney that we all know. And I'm also asking for Steve Davis to be appointed, and then another member of council for you guys to pick. It's very exciting. It's not a huge time commitment. It's going to be probably a 2-day meeting time period in the spring, where the EPA comes and they send some planners to help us come up with an action plan. And why this is really important, it's one of those, like, I think it will be very useful. It'll come up with very useful ideas, but it also kind of makes the Hanging Lake Shuttle system even more special than it is now, in case we need to seek funding for it. These were extraordinarily competitive. Only 10 cities in the nation got them, about 170 that applied. So it's kind of a good thing to keep going to make the Hanging Lake Shuttle system even stronger.
Sounds like a great idea. I support that.
Except for Christian. I like all the people on this. No,
Paul.
that sounds like a good idea. Thanks.
So unless somebody else also wants it, I'd be interested in helping out there as well. So
Okay.
That'd be great.
Great.
Devin? Sounds like we are a second.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. I think you can just,
Do we have to
Take-
vote on that?
I think it'd be worth just, since you are kind of appointing them.
I would move to approve a steering committee with Steve Davis as a council rep and Paula Stepp as an alternative, and the aforementioned members that the city manager mentioned. Is that appropriate?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Tony, seconded by Shelley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now let's get an update on how this thing has gone.
Yeah. Are you gonna get any sleep tonight?
Brought the IT director here to help me through this process.
Where's the present button on the new one? There it is.
Just go through. Okay. Perfect. Well, we're over the hump. We made it through the first summer, and I have to say it was a tremendous success. I think the partnership, the public-private partnership, really worked very well between, first of all, the City of Glenwood Springs, U.S. Forest Service, CDOT, Excel, ourselves, and the general public. And I think got a great presentation in front of you. I would like to have seen a little bit more action items that we can improve on, but realistically, we knocked it out of the park as a community, and everybody was very happy. There's a few items that we knew going into this that we had to address after we had some data, and I think following our initial meetings with the Forest Service and the city, we're going to address those this winter and come up with a plan for next summer. So I'll just go through the presentation right now. As you can see on the report right there, you can see actual trail use and reservations sold. There was always this balance of what's the meaning of $12 to some people, and to some families it's a considerable amount of money they're going to spend for a family of 4 or so on. And some people, $12 might have been a number that they wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to go today, the weather's not perfect. But there seemed to be a lot of people in line that wanted to go. We were never going to operate at 100%. I mean, that going into this, and that's where we had to find what was going to be sustainable. The target was 70%. We actually had 66% of trail use and 72% of permits sold. So we hit our target with that 70% there. Any questions on that page at all? Yes?
I just have a question on the difference between the number of hikers and the reservations.
That would be the ones that didn't show. Didn't show are canceled on the night before, a day off. I mean, with a permit structure, you also have to have somewhat of a strict cancellation policy. Otherwise, people would call up on the day off and say, you know, we've decided not to come, can I get a refund? And then you're hoping there's more people to come in through the door.
Yeah.
We started we realized that there was about a 10% no-show, if that's what you want to call it.
Okay.
And so we encouraged people to come to the Welcome Center and see if they could get on if nobody showed up, and it worked pretty smooth that way.
Okay.
So that's where we moved on from there. Again, the data we got, which is very beneficial for the tourism board, where were they staying? But we noticed obviously Glenwood Springs was number one. Driving through, people on their way, whether east or west, wanting to hit that bucket list, let's plan to do there. And then you've got everywhere from Denver to Pueblo. It's amazing the distances people were coming up for the day to do Hanging Lake. And the goal was, obviously, one of our city goals was when we get that individual. In the past, they might have just gone to Hanging Lake, turned around, left the rest area, and then headed back east, west, never came into our town. Now that individual is coming into our town, and hopefully we're converting, and we do have some numbers to show you, bringing them into our town. Okay. Any questions on that? No? Moving on here, it's just a little bit easier view for you to see where people were staying while visiting Hanging Lake. Here's an important number. So 66.3% came into our downtown core. 40% of those were actually staying here. So we got 23% whether to come in and go visit a restaurant, buy some gas, do another activity. But the number that we need to, I think, do a better job on next year is at 33.7%. Now, we encouraged people to come in through exit 114. We did that just for ease and not trying to bottleneck our town. And we gave them directions through their confirmation email. We told them to come in through exit 114. And so a lot of people might have just left that way too. So one of the things we've sat down with the DDA and the city, and we'd like a sign as you exit the Welcome Center parking lot there that says Historic Downtown Glenwood Springs, that direction. And I think the wayfinding and DDA and the city are working on ways that we can educate people to into our downtown core. Okay, so that goes into that EPA study, and how can we filter more of a majority of that 33% into our core. Okay. Moving on here, benefits of keeping this website. The reservation system is on Visit Glenwood. So that individual that's staying in Pueblo or staying in Estes Park or Vail or any of our surrounding small towns here, they got to visit the Glenwood Springs website and see all that we have to offer here as our community. And we saw how they're accessing it, whether through mobile, desktop. And again, this is data for the Tourism Board and the Chamber to help better advertising, better use of the marketing dollars. All right, moving on. This is data what we got from the Chamber in a sense of traffic through Visit Glenwood. We saw an increase sometimes of over 100% to the website, and it was a tremendous success. It definitely puts Visit Glenwood as the #1 site, way above and beyond anything in our region, which is what the Chamber Tourism Board wanted to achieve through Hanging Lake. As you can see, top visited pages for Visit Glenwood. #1, Hanging Lake. #2, the shuttle. #3, Adventure Office, which is the reservation system they're booking. Have a look at #10, lodging. Let's see what there is to do here. Let's do that, and then let's go book it, because you can see things to do in the summer. And I want to touch on this. This goes back into some of the conversations we've been having on the mind of us being recreation community, a tourism-based community. And this is showing people want to see what there is to do in our town, and then they say, let's book from there. All right. Any questions on that?
Real quick.
Yep.
So I noticed that this summer that the buses always use 114, right? The bus is going to Hanging Lake. You don't go the other way.
No, we actually sat down with Terry and talked about a route that's efficient going through town. Again, our first summer doing this. And it's obviously a lot more efficient in time frame wise to go 114 with our buses than it was to go Midland onto 8th Street and then turning one of those buses onto the Grand Avenue and then over the bridge. So there is, we are running on a shuttle time of every 45 minutes. Also, Terry gave us the advice too of when we came out of the community center of taking a left versus a right initially, not crossing traffic. As anyone that comes out of the community center in the morning will tell you, with school traffic in month of May or September and October. So we came up with a defined route, and then we adapted and moved that accordingly. But we didn't come into downtown, but for the weekend that the West Glenwood Bridge was closed for the paving period.
I'm just thinking that does expose people to downtown. I mean, like what you're talking about with the DDA and having people use exit 116 too.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, oh look at that restaurant, look at that store, I want to go there after we go to Hanging Lake, kind of thing.
There's a fine line there, Tony, of providing the service and not also pushing and taking an agenda item of, I think people want to get there, they want to do their hike and they want to get back, and I think just we as a community, we can do a better job with our wayfinding and our verbiage of how, let's go explore this historic downtown. That sounds nice, but there's no signage right now. But that's the first summer. If that's the biggest issue we have coming out of this, I think everybody should be very happy where we are right now, because it's I think it's a simple fix. I don't think it's we need to reinvent the wheel here. Here's some numbers on visiting Hanging Lake. You can see 71% had never visited before. It was great to see the return rate of 14 50% of people who've been there before. How many people were in your party? Interesting to see that, 50% is couples. If you'd asked me this prior, I would have said we're predominantly a family market, and this would have been a lot greater than just 2 people. But this actually matched into a campaign that the tourism board did, going after couples and breaking from the mold and not putting all their eggs into one basket as a family destination, but also advertising to couples, which we weren't aware of, but it matched into what they were trying to accomplish. And then, again, if you'd asked me back in March and April, would you expect a lot of children on the Hanging Lake Trail? I would have said yes. Again, it shows that not many children under 12 visited Hanging Lake. I think our message got out that the trail is not a beginner trail. It's a moderate to advanced trail, and although you can be happy to take your 4-year-old up, maybe there's other trails that are better uses for your younger kids than the Hanging Lake Trail. Moving on. Number one reason we did the shuttle system and the permit system. People complained that the Hanging Lake was being overrun. 93.1%, I think the Forest Service that's what they wanted to see. We achieved that goal. Moving on, overall experience. Item 1, I don't think no matter what we do, we'd ever please. Item number 4 and number 5, if you combine those, again, I think people were very happy with what we did in our first year. Where we got this data from, just so you're aware, is everybody that actually purchased a permit received an email. Was it 2 hours or 3 hours, Logan, after they went hiking?
As almost immediately, I think about 5 hours after this started.
After they started their hike, they got an automatic email sent to them. And for those of you who try to gather data, we had about a 27% return on our surveys, which is off the charts. I mean, usually 3 to 5%, maybe 7% if you're lucky, but 27%. So people wanted to give their piece. And you think if they weren't happy, because we all know sometimes it's the people that are unhappy are the first ones to vocal, and you can see everybody here was pleasantly excited about the experience they had. Moving on here, this was a question we all talked about, the interpretive educational component, and wondering, it's amazing, going into this we were all worried about price points, $12, and would people be willing to pay $12 to visit Hanging Lake and make this a sustainable. You can see people were even willing to pay more for an education component, and this matches into what the Forest Service and Kay's here are going to talk about, in a sense of where the funds are possibly going into having more rangers there and being able to offer this education. We're not charging more. We're not going to offer guided tours or any sort of Hanging Lake, but some of the proceeds for this and this return back to the U.S. Forest Service from this is going to allow to have more staff on the trail to basically provide people what they're saying that they want, just a little bit more education. Ease of making a reservation, 94% at that 4-5 mark. That's, again, we're doing a good job. I didn't expect these kind of numbers. I would have been happy with 75% and overjoyed. Number of reservations, conversions. The phone was a lot busier than we all thought. That threw us off a little bit. Although we had a lot more online reservations, we received, between ourselves and the chamber, we definitely had to ramp up our staffing on the phone side, because although people might have gone back and made a reservation online, they still called and had questions about the trail, or was it suitable, or should I bring this, or should I bring that, and a lot of questions there. So we're going to be adapting for that next year. That actually, the phone in allowed us to create more jobs, because we actually had to hire more people to answer more phones. Full-time staff, 48, part-time staff, 6. Okay, so it definitely brought some jobs. We also were able to maintain 2 year-round employees, because we are managing it through the winter. Our staff is up there 7 days a week, and we are either on the trail, off the trail, just making sure people are equipped and giving them advice and checking for permits, and also helping CDOT still, even though it's not in our contract, but we're up there and maintaining the the restroom when it's needed to be, and so on from there. Parking issues, community center. We didn't know how it was going to go over. They did have some big swim meets, and again, we didn't have any issues. I think some locals obviously had, in years past, been able to drive up right beside the community center and walk in there, and maybe this year they have to walk a little bit further from the second tier versus the first tier. Again, I think we have a better idea going into next year about some signage and moving people into some areas from there. So I'm not sure.
That they're going to.
That's what we said, yeah. But there, we brought up some ideas in the sense that there's some moms with small kids and things like that. So I think the City Parks and Rec are open to some new signage for there in the parking lot area. Shuttles, 2,188 shuttles.
Round trip or what, each way?
That's one way. Roughly 50% of the visitors, which was an amazing number, staying west of Glenwood Canyon when they visited, and with the average of 2.6 hikers. So we just did some numbers here, about 14,000 cars taken off the canyon by us running the shuttles in there. Issues that came across our table that we had to deal with, obviously the construction, the Excel project for the helicopters and delays. And you got to think about the numbers I just gave you in the sense of people thinking the overall experience. And we had some delays in the canyon, and people accepted those, and the expectations were set. And I-70 closures, we had the gate there at Hanging Lake that we had a few cars just didn't see it and go through it a few times. And then I want to talk about a very positive. Yesterday we met with CDOT, and I'm not sure if you're aware, we have this big construction project going through the canyon next summer, and I think it shows how well the partnership worked, that CDOT actually called ourselves and the Forest Service in and have actually come up with a plan to make the shuttles a little bit easier to use, between flaggers and the fact that we're on the radar. And here it goes, we've taken Hanging Lake off their table, and they're thinking of us during this construction process.
That's great.
Okay. Interesting, never thought about this going into this, is the visits from EMS, State Patrol, Search and Rescue. You can see 38 visits last 2018. In 2019, 3 visits. According to the fire chief, each visit for him was approximately $1,500 to $1,800, depending on the time frame. Again, these are numbers; they're not. These are gut numbers from him when I put him on the spot. But that's an ambulance and a fire truck that's sitting at Hanging Lake and out of our community. And now they were here because we had a more prepared user. The permit process explained to everybody about how they should be prepared, what footwear they should be wearing, bring plenty of water, and 3 visits out of 75,000 users. So I think the permit process shows the benefits of a permit process, whether it be free or whether it be paid for. A permit process has a more educated user. Okay. Local issues to address that we're going to sit down this winter. We have some ideas we've run through with Deborah and the Forest Service, and we're going to address these this winter and come up with some ideas. And restroom, is part of our job. Look after that restroom right there. People were happy with what we did. We joke about this one because this is the pit toilet at the bottom of the trail. I think we had the cleanest pit toilet in Colorado. The fact that 88% thought a pit toilet was actually 4 or 5 star, it showed that our staff cared. And that goes to one thing I want to say. In this environment of labor, and we all know labor's tough, out of all the different businesses I've run, in this one business, this is the one business that I didn't actually have to go out there and advertise for staff. I mean, we had a tremendous amount of locals who wanted to be part of this. lots of retirees. And I think the success of this, yes, we came up with a plan, but our staff put this into operation. These were locals who put this into operation. These weren't visiting college kids that just came in here to work for the summer and then leave. And this is a result of all their hard work. They're on there day in, day out. And it goes to the Forest Service Rangers, the community center staff, our staff. I think, again, they knocked it out of the park. This is their success. I'm just the one that has to stand up here and show you their success, okay? Off-season summary, this is what we're contracted to do this winter. You know, managing the trail conditions, we're actually going to have a video guy up there this weekend and taking video and posting that online. Managing the reservation system, the call center and the trail supervision. And then here again, here comes the partnership. CDOT actually gave us Wi-Fi at Hanging Lake. I mean, the fact that we have Wi-Fi from a state agency that's a guest Wi-Fi shows that everybody's buying into this to make this work, that you actually can drive into the Hanging Lake rest area, walk along the trail, see the signs, bring out your phone and purchase your permit and off you go. We didn't have to go all the way to Denver to get this done. I mean, the local CDOT guys were like, this has been awesome, let's make this work and let's get this done. So that's where we are. I'm not sure if Kay wants to say anything part of the Forest Service, or if you guys got any questions on us. I mean, at some point in me, I feel as if there should be something bad in here that you guys can sort of hold me to it, but realistically, it hasn't been. It's been a very pleasant surprise and a pleasant business to run. So,
I'd just like to say thanks, Ken and Forest Service and everyone involved, staff that was involved in this. You guys have done a great job for the first year especially. It's fantastic. And I like the ideas for having maybe a locals rate and the school kids rate, because I don't know if you had a lot of school groups go up there this year, but in previous years they always.
Yep, and that's where the use numbers that we were able to gather, if you go back to the very first slide, where we show that 53% are only visiting Hanging Lake during the month of May, and what we've got for September and October. I mean, when this first came out in January, February last year, it was like, oh, it's going to be sold out every day, and you know, the unknown. We have numbers to gauge on now, and there's plenty of space and opportunity for school groups to come and visit. And one of the things we're proposing is, we're not proposing a locals rate that can only go in May or in September and October. No, we're proposing a locals rate that's there every day, no matter whether it's July 4th or May 1st. Why penalize the local who might have been hiking it for the last 20 years? But now we got data to go by. That's what we didn't have at the start to make any judgment calls on where we should be with locals or school groups and some of the issues that arose.
Okay.
You know?
Thanks.
Yeah, congratulations on a job well done. I was really concerned, worried, had every fear of everything going wrong on this, so
No,
I
thank you.
appreciate your effort.
Yeah, and it's one of the first in the country of its kind, you know, and the private-public partnership, it shows it could be done if everybody believes in it and works through it.
Paula?
Awesome job, that's great, and just really good to see these numbers. Is there any packaging rates with like the hot springs or anything
No.
like that, and is there a reason that we...
Yes, yeah, the biggest reason, even with my own company, I mean, that was one of the concerns with other business owners in town when we, you know, if you say won the bid to do this, is that converting people over to other things or packaging. No, I mean, if you walk into the one of the highlights that I think when you walked into the Welcome Center, and the ice rink, I mean, it's the ice rink now, was that gateway to Glenwood Canyon, that overall packaging, and then we had the caverns in there, and we had the hot springs in there, and and then we invited Brochure Express, one of the rack companies, to put the rack cards in there. We didn't want to be seen to be playing any favoritism with any one individual company or doing anything. This is a city landmark, and it's a local landmark, and we were very sensitive of that. And I think that was one of the concerns in the business community when it got awarded locally. But I think we were very sensitive of that. So, and nothing's going to change.
Okay.
Can I make a comment? Is that okay at this point?
I think we're at the comment stage, yeah,
So,
by default.
the fire chief is here and you had that slide. I just think the community should really appreciate that you've gone from like in the 70s to 3 calls there because people have the proper shoes, they have water, they understand the hardness of the trail. When you send a fire truck and an ambulance or a crew into that canyon, that's, forget the cost, which of course we can't forget, but the time, and now they're not available for other calls. So, being on the fire board, I get to see those numbers, and it's just such a great benefit.
Yeah, and let me say, not all 38 numbers were strictly fire department numbers, whether it be state patrol or CDOT dealing with that or search and rescue. But overall, I think it just proves the point that education is key. And
But
everything
like
we
state
do.
patrol too, you may not know, there's like usually 2 troopers on duty from Aspen to Parachute. And one of them has to go into the canyon on call, that's somewhere else he can't be. So just taking that pressure off law enforcement, off CDOT, off the fire department is just great. Thank you.
Good,
Good job.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
I won't take a lot of your time. My name is Kay Hopkins, and I'm the outdoor recreation planner for the White River. I work here in Glenwood Springs out of the supervisor's office. And I know I've been in front of a lot of you before, but we just, from the forest, we can't thank the city, H2O, all of our partners enough. I mean, it's been a long road, but it's definitely been worth it, and everything that Ken has reported tonight, we so appreciate the benefits that for the public, because it's not our land, it's the public's land, and it's just worked out so well. I mean, we're thrilled. I think the flexibility of all of our partners coming together this summer during the first season was pretty remarkable in addressing everything from service dogs to hiking poles to cleaning the bathroom to, like you said, the road construction. The partnership continues to meet, all the stakeholders meet every 2 weeks, and we will continue that throughout this first operating season. And it's been really remarkable how well everyone's getting along and jumping right on things that need to be addressed. So I wanted to bring that up. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know is the 5% of the gross receipts that come back to the agreement will be used for on-the-ground rangers in the canyon. The Forest Service contributes about, I would say a little more than half, but in order to staff the whole Glenwood Canyon crew, which is the river crew and the Hanging Lake crew, so that's Shoshone, Grizzly, and Hanging Lake, it's about $132,000. So it's a big lift, and with uncertainties with hiring and budgets with the Forest Service, this is just a huge piece of helping to make operations and visitor services sustainable there. So that's really great. I did bring a budget if anyone wants to see the exact budget, but yeah, we just couldn't be more excited about continuing. And so far the winter operations look like they're working really good, thanks to Ken's crew being there in the winter and the Wi-Fi, and it's all working very well. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to say without going on and on about how great everything is. But any questions that you have for me regarding budget or what the Forest Service is doing with those funds, like I said, it will go, 40,000 of that right now is planned for seasonals, and 8,000 will be put into a fund that we can use for emergency infrastructure repairs, maintenance, and or for seasonals next year if we come up with shortfalls. So that's what I have. Is there any questions for us?
Great. I would love to get a copy of the budget. If that's
You
okay.
bet. I actually brought 7 copies here.
Oh,
so
wonderful. Thank
yeah.
you. You are prepared.
I'll leave it with Devin.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say thank you very much. The White River Forest has been great to work with. This is a great partnership, and obviously you guys are the tip of the spear on a lot of this. Ken with H2O Ventures, obviously, the service level you provided has just been fantastic. So
Thank you.
I can't let it go without throwing my 2 cents in, or my 2 thanks in.
Thank you very much. And like Ken said, it's being looked at across the country. You would not believe how many invites and presentations we've been doing throughout the Forest Service across the country. So a lot of people are looking at this as a model, and that's really something everyone here should be very proud
Yeah,
of. So,
that's
thank you.
fantastic.
And if I may, at all those presentations, Mike, I am making them perfectly aware that all the pain and torture was your fault. Seriously, thank you, council, for trusting us. Thank you, Mike, for pushing when maybe I was like, I don't want to be pushed. And I think it's worked out really, really well. And thank you, Ken.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kate. And
great job.
Oh,
Yeah,
we got,
congratulations all the way around.
Councilor Voorhees has a question, comment?
I do have a question.
Comment.
Yes. You know, this kind of collaboration is really an unnatural act, and the fact that you guys were able to come together and put this success forward and serve people, and you're still talking after a year, and, you know, I think we also need to give proper sort of credit to Deborah and the city staff for sort of quarterbacking all of this. I mean, there aren't many models for this kind of work out there that you can just, you know, grab it and plug it and play it. And so, hearty congratulations all the way around. I was sort of a doubting Thomas that we could do this, but you made a believer out of me. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, if there's no other questions, comments, we'll move on to item number 10. Funding request for the Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance.
Steve?
Mr. Mayor, Council, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Bergey. I reside at 109 Park Drive. I am a board member of the Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance. We're here tonight to ask a big ask, and we recognize that it's a large ask. We're asking you to help us in partnership to face the threat that we all know is out there. And what a perfect segue to have a presentation about one of the very pristine things that makes this community so special to all of us. Having grown up here, in the days when going to Hanging Lake took nothing more in terms of thought than just to go, it's interesting to see how the numbers have grown and how this attraction is still so vital to people's understanding of what this special place is. We want to keep it that way, and we're entering into a phase with 2020 approaching when this is going to become hugely more active. We've been hard at work since 2018. We've accomplished a lot of great things, but we are at a point where we could really use the city's help in terms of some additional funding. As you see in your packet, we're asking you for a total of $50,000. We would like to see that in terms of a $20,000 upfront grant with a $30,000 amount held in escrow as a matching fund, which will help us kick off our local fundraising effort and will give us a real leg up to be able to tell people that the city they live in and love is willing to help us stretch their dollars, double their dollars up to an amount of $30,000. It would give us the ability to raise a larger sum, and it would give us the war chest we need to do the public outreach, do the printing of t-shirts and bumper stickers and all of those accoutrements which will be disseminated in the community to help knit this community together in unity around this issue. We recognize that any ask is a big deal, and we know this is one, but we have great faith that the partnership that we have with you in terms of this issue is one that will bear real fruit if we can really mount a substantial public effort to carry forward in terms of putting this issue forefront in the minds of not only the people here, but the people of the state and indeed people at the national level. Because there are people who come here from all over the country. And so we need to make sure that we are really mounting a campaign that will do that sort of thing. I want to just read one little thing because even though he has never been here, you would believe that he had, and it's one of my favorites. Wendell Berry writes, "The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free." This is what Glenwood means to me. I hope it means the same for all of us. And it is a sacred trust we have to try to turn this threat to our community aside. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for considering our request. For the record, I'm Mike Gamba. I'm a Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance board member, and I'm not even going to attempt to expound on what Stephen said. He was very articulate and passionate in his discussion, as he usually is. I would just like to thank this council for their past support in battling this particular issue that is facing Glenwood, and I would respectfully add my request to you for this funding. The Citizens Alliance is, I think, a very effective measure at, we're an effective component in helping the city and the county deal with this threat to our community. And I don't think I need to emphasize it to you guys. You have demonstrated already that you're on board with the opposing the threat to our community, and I would just like to add my voice to the request for this funding measure, and I think it will. The Citizens Alliance is a very responsible group. Jeff Peterson, the executive director, runs a very good organization there, and I think these funds will be well spent in furthering our combined goal. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Does anybody have any questions specifically for anybody from the Citizens Alliance?
I do.
Paula.
Thanks. Mike or Steve or Heather, I spoke to this earlier today in council comments, and I'm hoping that you work with our local businesses and tourism community to make sure that the marketing isn't detrimental to that you do, which needs to be done, obviously, for what has to happen, but also making sure that we work together with the community to not diminish the tourism population now in response to people thinking that something's already going on. Does that make sense? There's some concern that tourists already will be thinking, oh, why go to Glenwood? Because this thing is going on, and we want to make sure that people still come here. So,
I think we're very sensitive to that issue.
okay.
Among other things, we have tried to bend our efforts in terms of outreach to making sure that we educate the public. One of the things that we emphasize is for people to go to our website where we post updates continuously to keep people apprised of the process and where it is. The overall underlying message is that Glenwood is open for business and nothing has changed. and that the effort that we're mounting is to make sure that nothing does change. So I think we're working very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're trying to be very sensitive to the needs of businesses and the needs of the citizens. And so I hope that gives you a flavor of what we're doing. We're certainly not out there trying to incite a situation that would be detrimental to the city in terms of its tourism economy. It's what we're trying to protect.
Great, thank you.
And I would just add, as Stephen said, we are working closely with the chamber, and I know they're very skilled at dealing with this exact kind of issue of trying to get the word out, but also let people know that we are open for business and that it's not, at this point, affecting tourism. It is a very fine line we have to walk, because I think it's important from a political perspective that we pursue support for our goals, our efforts across the state. And so we need to educate and inform people on the Front Range about the threat to Glenwood Springs, but do so in a way that lets them know that, yes, we are open for business. It hasn't happened yet, and we're doing everything we can to prevent it from happening. And so I think we're in good hands with the chamber to pursue that message.
One other quick aside, I handed out these, this is the official rollout. The mayor has already got his on his bumper. But this is the new logo for effort, and these bumper stickers will be handed out after the first of the year. And starting now, that really we're going to bulk up after the first of the year with the funds that you give us if you decide to honor our request. And so we'll be looking to try to paper the community with signs and with bumper stickers, and really work hard to bring more people into Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance as members. It's really, we have over 2,000 members now. We're not satisfied with that number, but we're working daily to try to increase those numbers. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm lit up, and you know what that means. Charlie, questions?
Yes, you talk about in the request about your spending for the first quarter, and we're looking at 30,000 beyond that if we give this. And Paul just raised this concept of how do we get to the Front Range people, make them aware of this to kind of get them to support it. I go to Denver frequently enough and hear, oh, you live in Glenwood, that's what a great place to be. And I think we need to try to get them involved in this process, because it is an important thing. Is that in this somewhere that I'm not seeing, or how do you look at doing spending money on the eastern slope?
Charlie, part of the funds will go toward one specific thing that I know about that we've already talked about and are planning to do, is to place a full-page ad in the Denver Post after the first of the year, listing all of the names of all of the members of the Alliance and all of the businesses who have signed on in support of our effort. We continue to reach out to the news entities on the Front Range. We've had some success there. As you well know, the Denver Post editorial board posted an editorial. We have a young fellow, his name is Blevins, at the Colorado Sun, who's done a tremendous job of in-depth reporting. It gets a lot of coverage on the Eastern Slope, but we continue to reach out to other organizations, and we will redouble our efforts in that regard. We're working with the city's outreach team to do that too. I mean, it's a coordinated effort. We think of this as a partnership. We look at ourselves as just the citizens who help the city accomplish this goal, and so we see it as a true partnership.
Thanks.
Councilor Voorhees.
Yeah, I'll just yield because my question just got asked by Charlie. Thank you for your work.
Councilor Hersey, any questions?
Just a question.
Okay.
I don't know if this is for Deborah or for Steve. Where is this money coming out of, or if it was approved, would it come out of already appropriated funds for this? Or where's it coming from?
I believe the original kind of, where we're going to suggest the money came from was like off the top of the FAB funds that are typically, that council awards every year. So the
Oh.
grant funding, because it is a grant to a nonprofit.
So it's not coming out of funds that we've appropriated for this other money that we're spending for art law?
I mean, that is certainly a decision you guys can make, but no, that was not my intention. We will need the $250,000 that we have in operating funds for what we're undertaking.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, is it available for the other million, from the other million?
You would then be, that's a reserve fund,
Mhm.
so you would be eating into reserves.
Mhm.
But yes,
Okay.
but if you do decide to take it off the top of the, discretionary funds, that would leave about $150,000 still for FAB to distribute.
It's 200,000.
For you guys to distribute based upon their recommendations.
It's 200,000 overall, right, in that?
Yeah, that, if you
Generally,
take the 50 off the
Plus or
top.
minus, yeah, okay.
Any other questions for the Citizens Alliance?
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Gavin.
All right, I'd like to open this up to public comment. And by that, I mean, I guess no one wants to comment for the public. All right, I'll bring it back to council for questions, or for comments and or motion. And I guess I'd like to maybe start off and just thank you guys so much for what you do. You guys are able to do things that we're not able to do. You're able to react in ways that sometimes we're not able to. So I really appreciate all the time, talent, and money that you guys have personally put into this, and everybody else that's affiliated with you guys. And I also want to make sure that the citizens know that our town, that we're here on council are personally and professionally committed to fighting this mine and standing with you. It's one thing to use city funds and taxpayer money to support great people like yourself and the cause that we both share. It's a whole other thing to put your personal money on the table. And I want to just offer up $500 personally to the Citizens Alliance to help advance your cause, our cause. And, I think that it's a worthy cause that we're all fighting here, and I want people to know that this is not just about the city helping out a nonprofit. It's about our commitment, and in this case, my commitment. So thank you very much. Steve.
Yeah, I also would match that $500 in my personal funds. I want you guys to really know that we fully appreciate all of your efforts. I think this is a huge battle. You guys are a very important tool in our war chest, and I support you completely. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Charlie.
Yes, a couple of things. One, I want to thank all of you. I know all of you have been involved in the city in various capacities, and I'm sitting up here and sitting in Steve's chair. And Mike has obviously been in our mayor, and Heather, I know you've been involved in the committee for years. And I want to thank you all for all the time you all put in for this. I think it's just remarkable. We all know how much time it takes, and I want to really thank you for doing that. I sat down at the dais tonight and we had a letter in front of me from representative of Secretary Terry David Bernhardt, and the arrogance of the approach to this from the Department of Interior causes me great concern. For an example of that is that they want to address the non-compliance issues that were in existence when they bought the quarry, but they don't say anything about the non-compliance issues that have occurred since they bought the quarry. And if the Department of Interior is taking that position, it seems to me they're already making decisions that we need to be careful about, we need to be fighting. I want to join my fellow council members, and I want to volunteer that I will also donate $500 of my money to the campaign. I think it's very important. And I would move to approve a $20,000 grant to the Citizens Alliance and for the first quarter of 2020, and to also approve up to $30,000 on a matching grant. I hope that is not only matched but exceeded by our local community. I think it's very important.
Can I ask a question of the motion or before it's seconded?
Yes.
Would you consider having those funds taken from existing money that the people of this community have already set aside, Charlie, to this fight, as opposed to money that is for other nonprofits that have gone through the nonprofit process? Because I would support that.
I wouldn't have any objection to that.
I would also support
I'd
that.
second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, been moved by Charlie and seconded by Tony.
Yes, that's a second. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Further comments? Councilor Cobb.
Okay. Again, I'll echo what other council members have said up here. Thank you so much to the Citizens Alliance. I really love seeing a grassroots organization come together and working so hard for the community. So I continue to want to support that. I certainly support the motion. I do like the idea of it coming from the funds that we've already appropriated to fight the RMR expansion. So, and I think that's good too, because some of these requests are larger than our typical grants that are funded out of our grant pool. So this will keep that pool healthy for other nonprofits and lines up with our funding. And I would also like to say that my family will also commit $500 towards the Citizens Alliance for the continued fight and support of our community. Thank you for your work.
Councilor Voorhees.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to feel lonely up here tonight, so I'm going to do you one more. I've got my checkbook with me, and I'll be glad to write the check before you guys leave here tonight. So thank you very much, and that would be from Dr. Ellis and myself, and really heartfelt thank you for keeping this going, and I know that we'll be back together many times as we go forward here. So thank you.
All right. We have, any other comments? We have a motion and a second on the table. Seeing no other comments, let's call the question.
Hershey, yes. Step, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Carp, yes. Voorhees, yes. Wellman, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much,
you all.
guys.
I just want to say quickly how humbled we are that you believe in us. And I'm going to see you on and raise you on. I have a check here for the Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance in the amount of $1,000 of my own. So thank you for your contributions. We really appreciate it. We've already started eating away at the $30,000 escrow account.
Thank you very much. And not that any police candidates have to or anything, but not that there's anything tied to it, right? Just for any lawsuits as a joke, it's a joke.
Thank you.
Oh, and Mr. Mayor, I'll return.
Yes.
They're addicting, Steve. All right, item number 11. Intergovernmental agreement between the City of Glenwood Springs and RAFTA to complete the Grand Avenue Alternative Analysis Congestion Reduction Study.
Good evening, Council. This is really a continuation of the discussion we had at the last meeting, furthering our study with RAFTA and with Parsons, also known as the Congestion Reduction or the Corridor Study by RAFTA. This agreement that I'm asking you to approve tonight is really just a formalization of how the contracting process will work. RAFTA will take the lead, but the city will be a close second in approving change orders and invoices and evaluating any changes in conditions. So I think it's a pretty straightforward agreement. The other provision I think that was important in this agreement was that we agreed to split any legal fees that would be, that may come with this study. But outside of that, I think it's a standard agreement, again, just formalizing our partnership with this study. Do you have any questions for me?
Paul?
I think I've asked this before, but there's still a possibility of that split in that RAFTA agreement to see some compensation change with the MOC agreement, right?
Yes, they originally wrote our financial arrangement with the MOC sale already having had occurred, but because we still have that to decide that yet, it reflects the condition without the MOC, the sale of the MOC, but I think RAFTA anticipates that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? All right. I'll bring it back to council for a motion and
I would move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Glenwood Springs, the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority to complete the Grand Avenue alternatives analysis.
Second.
It's been moved by Rick, seconded by Charlie. Charlie, did you have any further comment?
No,
Okay.
I was using my button.
Aye.
That's what
Oh, wait a minute, that's not what I'm supposed to be.
Dang, that's a burn. All right.
But I defer to Honorable Mr. Voorhees.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there further comments? Let's call the question.
Hershey, no. Step, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Carp, yes. Voorhees, yes. Willman, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Terry. All right, item number 12, Resolution 2019-45, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, authorizing the sale of 19 acres of city property located at 2307 Wolfson Road and referring the question to voters at a special election on April 14th, 2020. What is this all about, Carl?
No idea. Following up on the brief discussion you guys just had, RAFTA is interested in purchasing the MOC property. It's property that we've determined, at least at staff level, that we no longer have. It's probably better put to use to expand their facilities out at the immediately adjacent. We are subdividing off a small section of, obviously there's a larger parcel of land that the city owns. It'll be about 19 acres. It's slightly less than 19 acres. And underneath the charter, it requires an election on property that's been put to a governmental purpose. So that's setting this election for April 14th. You may wonder why it's so far in advance. Turns out this is 2020 and it's a presidential election year. And so there are requirements about how close to or after an election, statewide election, that you can hold a local election, and there is a presidential primary in the middle of the first quarter. Hence, the earliest date that we can possibly set it is April 14th. So that's where we're at. And that's what this resolution does, is both sets the election and then sets the question as well.
Questions for Carl? Rick?
So you may not know this, Carl, but what's the status of the property right now? I mean, is it being used? Is it?
Sorry, I was like teetering, collapsing.
What's the adjective?
We're continuing to use it for some storage, I believe, at this point, and some of the exterior, parking lot areas, things like that. But not, we have been actively moving everybody out. RAFTA, just as we were talking, got an email question from Dan Blankenship because they're considering the IGA and purchase contract on their meeting next week that Jonathan will be at, just like, hey, what's the status? And I said, funny you should ask. It's the next agenda item. So that's where we're at.
So the electric department's out now?
I don't know if they are or not.
Not yet, no.
No, okay.
So.
Any other questions? All right, let's open this up to public comment. Well, let's resound. Let's bring it back to council for a motion and or comments. I do, yes, I would.
Context. I move that we pass Resolution 2019-45, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, authorizing the sale of a 19-acre portion of city property located at 2307 Wolfson Road and referring the question to the voters at a special election on April 14, 2020.
Second.
Been moved by Paula, seconded by Steve. Any further comments? Oh, Rick? I see your light flashing. Nope, okay. Let's call the question.
Hershey, yes. Step, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Carp, yes. Voorhees, yes. Willman, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Item number 13, Resolution 2019-44, resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, declaring its official intent to reimburse certain expenditures relating to the broadband project with proceeds of indebtedness prior to the closing of debt funding.
Say that word again,
Indebted.
Indebted.
I used it the first time.
Hi, everybody. So we are getting ready to raise some money for our broadband initiative. We're still kind of wrestling with the pro forma a little bit to figure out and kind of hone in on exactly the number that we need to raise. So that'll take us a couple of weeks. We're going to go out into the capital markets and look around and see what's available to us. We'll ultimately make a decision and close on a loan. That may take some time. We don't want the timing of our project to be driven by the timing of our financing. So by passing this resolution, it allows us to keep electric fund money separate from broadband money. And if we have expenditures between now and whenever we actually close, we can reimburse ourselves, so to speak, and use the broadband loan that we just closed on to fund those expenses in the interim. Just like we did with the A&I fund a few months ago.
Questions, Paula?
Just a quick question. At one point in time, that was estimated a project of about $12 million, but because of the way things are going now, it may be closer to $7 million. Is that still kind of what we're looking at?
I mean, I think you're generally right. I mean, I think we're going to probably end up somewhere in the area of $9 million.
Over the years?
I'm sorry, how many years?
Yeah.
Probably 15 years.
Okay.
We haven't decided on the timing yet, but probably the number that we're going to need to come up with is around 9.
Okay.
Charlie.
Steve, I listened to what you just said. I read this. I've been still confused. Are we creating a separate broadband department now? Is that what's happening?
No, our broadband department lives within our electric fund.
Right.
And so when we go out to raise this money, we're going to use the revenues from our electric fund, which is a Tabor Enterprise Fund, to secure that payment. Ultimately, our broadband utility will be its own utility fund, just like water or electric. But until we get up and running and we have some cash flow, the electric fund has to kind of boost us. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we borrow money from the broadband portion of the electric fund and keep it separate so that we're not really using electric customers' dollars to subsidize broadband.
So we pay it back, we'll pay it back to the electric fund.
Yes, correct.
Money go back to electric.
Correct.
Thanks, I just was quite clear.
Right.
To make it even drier, it actually also implicates the tax code to making sure that the expenditures are tax exempt and don't violate any of the rules that will go along with any borrowing that we would do in the placement of that capital asset. So,
You're right, that did make it drier.
I try really hard.
Way to jazz it up there.
Because it was really fun till then.
Yeah, I was like,
Shelley.
So Steve, how would that be paid back then over the 15 years? And what, do you have any idea of what that cash flow would be, like an annual expense? And if it wouldn't come from electric funds, where's it going to come from until the broadband is generating enough revenue to cover
Yeah, so right now our broadband fund makes money. It's not going to make enough money to pay for this debt service yet, right? And we're probably talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 a year, kind of roughly. Our broadband is going to ultimately break even. We do believe that it'll pay for itself and everything will be fine. We will need to borrow some money, so to speak, from the electric fund. So the plan is to pay that money back from broadband to the electric fund, sort of interest-free, but make the electric fund whole, ultimately. And time-wise, we're looking at about a 17-year sort of total break-even until the broadband is up on its own, profitable, electric fund is completely paid back, and the debt is paid off, and we're kind of finished.
Okay,
So
and the
no.
electric fund has enough cushion in there to handle that?
Yeah. Yeah, electric fund is fine there.
Okay.
any other questions? Just to be clear, Park West gets the first crack at this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking.
Absolutely.
All right.
I have been
Except for
told-
one house.
I have been told by Michael there will be no pressure accepted on where broadband goes first.
No,
Because
I
I
just-
was trying myself.
I just know I've been promised for many years that as soon as Midland, South Midland gets done, which I know is happening next year, that broadband's part of that. So that's just, I'm just adding.
I'm not concerned because I have it.
So do I. Somehow Councilman Rowland on our street was just miraculously.
You know what, that
having
is
to get
amazing how that happened.
So I'd like to say this is an amazing development here. We're going down a great pathway. I appreciate the leadership in putting this together and the financials. And, you know, this is a step along the way to segregate the money so that we know what's coming in, what's going out, good business practice. And it'll be really exciting to have high-speed internet as an inducement for, you know, the kind of economic development that we need in this town. So, thank you. I'm ready to vote.
Oh, well, I got to open the public comment real quick.
Oh, okay.
All right, we will open it now to public, I'm sorry, are there any more questions for staff? Okay, we'll open it to public comment. See, now we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back now for Rick's motion. Oh, I'm sorry, or a
One
comment.
more question for Steve. Steve, oh, don't go away. So we're approving this tonight, but will this come back before we actually sign on the dotted line? This will come
Oh,
back
yeah.
with the full financials
Yeah,
and
this,
everything, so we can get a look at
this
it.
is really just so that even the monies that we're spending right now on setting up a potential borrowing, we could be reimbursed for through that borrowing.
Okay,
That's really all this is.
okay.
And what you're saying is right, Shelley. You guys will have access to a pretty detailed pro forma
Yeah.
that'll go out about 20 years or so. So you guys will really be able to see into the insides of this before we close on any money or make any ultimate decisions.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion from Rick, starting to? All right, and a second by Charlie?
Yeah, and I just, one discussion point if I may, and I would do second it.
No, you're fine.
I just think this is an amazing thing for our community to be able to provide this to our citizens. This is like installing electric lines in my earlier years. So I do appreciate it.
I tried.
I really do think it's an amazing service for our citizens, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. So.
All right, we have a motion by Rick, a second by Charlie. Let's call the question.
Hershey, yes. Step, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Carp, yes. Voorhees, yes. Willman, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
It's a big deal.
Economic development.
All right, item number 14, Economic Development Year-End Review.
I never met her before tonight.
He's heard a few council sessions.
I know, but I just met him. Why are we punishing these people by making motions?
They're seeing what's going on.
Well, this is actually this presentation.
Yeah.
All right, good evening. Matt Nunez, Economic Development Specialist, and I'm joined by Jen, of course, my wonderful leader, who has helped guide me over the past few months as I've stepped into my new role. And I'm here to provide an overview of the accomplishments surrounding economic development, which we have achieved over the past couple of years for myself over the past couple of months, and to also invite your feedback, your recommendations moving forward as far as what areas we should really focus on as we look into 2020 and beyond. As some of you probably recall, Council adopted an economic development strategy really about a year ago to the day, and we have worked off of that document really quite significantly In fact, I met the gentleman who helped write the document earlier this week, and I told him, thank you, this has been my playbook over the first couple months on the job. It provides really a wealth of recommendations as well as a broad overview of the current climate of economic development within Glenwood Springs, many key points as you can see listed on the slide, as well as focus areas. And of course, many of these recommendations and focus areas are generally accepted economic development practices in any community you visit, but some of them are also really tailored towards Glenwood Springs, particularly the focus area recommendations, which the council helped to guide and shape as this report was being published. And there are 6 of those, creating Glenwood as a regional trade center, as a regional service center, helping to promote tourism development, downtown development, focusing on community development and enhancement, as well as, of course, job growth and creation. And these will be covered more in depth at the end of my presentation, in which we do cover some of the many, many recommendations that were outlined in this report and seek your guidance as far as what to focus on moving forward. So a quick recap over the past 2 years. It feels a little odd to speak of my own hiring as an accomplishment, but I hope that you all view it that way. I do just want to express my thanks for bringing me along and allowing me to help improve this community. I'm very honored to be here. And of course, we heard earlier about the Hanging Lake Shuttle Service and the wonderful successes that they have had. 7th Street Revitalization Project we're very proud of, and we're very happy to see the Bethel Plaza dedication earlier this fall, and look forward to that area continuing to really be a boon for the local businesses downtown. I'll touch a little bit later on a new revolving loan fund opportunity, which we are launching in Q1 as the result of a grant from the USDA. And then, of course, looking forward across many departments, affordable housing is a focus for us. So in September, at the end of September, I think this was my 3rd or 4th day on the job, but we had a meeting with a number of individuals in the community at the Coop co-working space with the Regional Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, as well as the Regional Director of USDA for Rural Development, and really enjoyed a conversation around what Glenwood has achieved in these areas, as well as getting the chance to introduce them to local businesses. We took a tour around town. Councilor Kopp was there, and so she can certainly attest to.
It's a great meeting. Yep.
You have a good picture of her.
We always see she was there.
I was there.
That was also a great introduction for me on one of my first days.
They all want to come back too.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, they were all eager to try Casey's. It was, I think it was shortly after it opened down there.
But it was the middle of the day and they had another meeting, so they had to come back later.
And as far as the Small Business Development Center, we have a new individual who is the regional director for the SBDC. She is based out of Eagle, and I don't envy her job. She has a large area to cover and many folks to work with, but she has really done an extraordinary job so far reaching out to the various communities, and I'm very excited to see Glenwood Springs be more involved in the SBDC services in 2020 and beyond. As you can see, we have not yet received the full 2019 numbers as far as how many consulting sessions were here, but as you can see, just from the first half of the year, we are well on our way to surpassing them, so I look forward to seeing those final numbers.
So earlier this year, Angie Anderson and Carolyn Tucker from the Colorado Workforce Center and Sarah and I met with some businesses. We held a retail and hospitality industry partnership meeting. One of the ideas there was that there was a state grant, and it hasn't actually still become available, but we were trying to pull these folks together kind of in service to a potential grant application. But what we heard from those folks is that affordable housing and childcare, healthcare, transportation, broadband, mental health, difficulty in attracting and keeping employees, and substance and opioid abuse are all big problems affect businesses. And so as a next step, we'd like to bring together 10 to maybe 30 businesses to kind of pull together some ideas about how to tackle some of these really, really difficult, big problems that affect Glenwood Springs, but also the regional communities, and something that we probably have to solve together. There are lots on this list that we probably can't do all by ourselves. So I know that the businesses are interested in doing that. We met in June and haven't had an opportunity to come back to that. We are hopeful that there would be this grant opportunity sometime in the future to kind of support that effort, maybe to do training. But it's also been a busy few months, and so we need to get back to that. But I think it was a good first step, and it was good to hear the businesses sort of, we know that these are problems, but they're business problems too, and it was good to be able to talk about that.
So as far as positioning and marketing moving forward, we really want to ensure that the city is presented in the community as business friendly and providing and advertising the services, or at least the resources that we can to help connect business owners as well as the general community to anything that they may need to enhance what they're providing to our community. To that end, we have worked with the Chamber. The Chamber has a wonderful directory of businesses in the community, and we are also looking forward to working beyond Glenwood Springs to both market our local retail opportunities as well as pursue additional ones to come to Glenwood. Additionally, Jen and myself have both worked pretty significantly on our website. If you visit the economic development page on the city website, you'll see that it has been expanded quite extensively. It has a number of additional pages taking you to building regulations, zoning, lodging, dining, any of the permits you may need, as well as we're trying to build out an FAQ section to help explain what hypothetically a business owner may need to go through to establish their operation, as well as additional resources, of course linking to our partners at the DDA and the Chamber, among others, but also providing them with access right there on our page to the SBDC, the Small Business Administration, other resources where they can find financing or just support. And then also, finally, for positioning and marketing, Jen created a great little brochure highlighting many of the city's current efforts, and also giving an overview of some of the Opportunity Zone regulations for our community, which I'll cover in a little bit more depth later on. And additionally, the Shop Glenwood campaign, we have really put a lot more focus into this past Saturday. You may have seen an ad in the paper on Friday or Saturday, but we did a little Small Business Saturday event for a couple hours at the Visitor Center with the Chamber. And Small Business Saturday, of course, is an American Express initiative, which the Chamber is a neighborhood champion, if you will. And so they received all sorts of great items, buttons, stickers, tote bags to hand out. We handed out some donuts from Sweet Colorado, as well as coffee, hot chocolate, and despite the windy and cold weather, we still had over 70 folks come in and stop by. So we're looking forward to continuing this in the future and potentially making it bigger next year. Additionally, in the spring of this previous year, there was a May the 4th event, Star Wars themed, if you didn't catch that. And we had several hundred individuals come out for that, including many dressed up as Star Wars characters, from my understanding. And we're looking forward to doing something very similar in the spring this year.
Yeah, we're sort of, because May the 4th is on a kind of an inconvenient day for an event, this was positioned well on the weekend so that we could have kind of like a little trick or treat street. The businesses participated with all the little kids dressed as Star Wars folks, and then they watched the movie. I think it was the Han Solo movie that we had screened under the bridge. It's not a convenient day in 2020 to be able to host that event again with a different Star Wars movie, so we're looking at doing something else, but again, working with the businesses and having a kind of a shop Glenwood and fun activity. We talked a little bit about doing the Kentucky Derby as a screening, so we have to work through that because it's more expensive than doing the Han Solo movie, but we're working through that. The West Glenwood Mall redevelopment, one of the things that you did last year, also almost a year to the day, was approve the Urban Renewal Authority plan and the blight study. And there may be a future opportunity to support reinvestment into this approximately 16 acres with tax increment financing. And so more to come on that, but wanted to highlight it, and we've been working on this project all year. Carl and I have been working on it all year. And then downtown development, I think a couple of slides of the 7th Street project and kind of the growies and the space kind of in its finished state, so we're excited about that. Arts and entertainment, one of the things that we did this year was work on the North Landing sculpture through that process with the NEA. So we received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to fund a portion of this sculpture, which had kind of kicked off this idea of an arts plan. So we'll be starting that process in 2020. In the next few weeks, we're going to be kind of pulling together the stakeholders list. But that plan will help us identify other future places for public art and streetscape placemaking. One of the things that you hear a lot about in terms of economic development is that people like to come to beautiful places and interesting places, and so public art does support economic development in that way because it only enhances the experience that people have here when they come, and people who live here have the same feeling. So it is both something for the locals and then also for our guests as well. And then the Hanging Lake Management Plan, we've talked a lot about that this evening. One thing that Ken didn't mention is that the national media attention that we've received for Hanging Lake is about an estimated $9.5 million in traditional advertising equivalency. So that's a huge deal. We had an article in the New York Times to talk about kind of that preservation, tourism, those kind of concepts working together. So that is a neat thing, and I know that the tourism folks are really excited to be able to talk about Hanging Lake because they haven't for a very long time. So to have it be a managed resource and have them be able to include Hanging Lake in their advertising is something new and exciting for them. They don't have to be afraid to talk about it because we're managing the resource.
Try to stay brief and not go too much into the weeds here, but both opportunity zones and enterprise zones I want to speak briefly about. As I'm sure you know, in April 2018, 2 opportunity zones in Glenwood Springs were designated under the federal tax legislation, and generally speaking, I'll show a map and you'll see it's not perfect, but generally that's north of the Colorado River as well as east of the Roaring Fork within city limits. And this essentially is an opportunity for investors who have unrealized capital gains from previous investments to reinvest those within these opportunity zones for projects that have to do with economic development, and it is for a tax credit, essentially. So this, in our area, this is administered through 4 Points Funding. They cover, if I'm not mistaken, they cover the entire western slope. They are the Opportunity Fund, and there was a meeting last year from my understanding, and we look forward to working with them as well as our state representative ways to really help push this forward.
Yeah, so, the Opportunity Fund you can self-certify, so if you have capital gains and you qualify, your project qualifies, you can, it's just a self-certifying, so you would work with your tax attorney and accountants to be able to do that. We do see that the 4 Points Funding folks are trying to make an investment in Glenwood, and then there's another project where there's some other outside funders who are interested in being part of the project. And it doesn't show up on the screen very well here, but all those areas in yellow, and essentially in the southern half of the city, it really is the railroad corridor that is kind of the demarcation line rather than the river, but it's pretty close to the river as well.
And also enterprise zones, which are a state initiative through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. This is another really group of tax incentives within these areas throughout the state. And the amounts depends on what industry or what program you are applying for or working within. But in 2020, we are planning to publish send out a mailer to the businesses located both within the opportunity zones and the enterprise zones, just to educate them and ensure that they are aware of opportunities they have. On top of that, likely in the same mailer, we'll be telling them about our revolving loan funds. This was a $93,000 grant from the USDA with $25,000 matched from the city's economic development budget to lend money to small businesses for various working capital needs, which you can see there. The terms are $5,000 to $40,000, very low interest, as you can see, over a number of years. And I've just finished compiling that committee, and so actually, I thought I had the updated presentation, but this will go live in January or February of 2020. And additionally, one of the other projects I've been working on over the past couple months is working with this convening group. This group was originally pulled together by Jen in the spring to explore workforce diversification opportunities within Glenwood Springs. We have kind of tailored that to look at post-secondary opportunities and work opportunities for current high school students. So that has taken us to explore various apprenticeship models throughout the state. CareerWise is a very well-established model in the Denver metro area and has worked in other parts of the 70 corridor as well. Youth Entity is, of course, a local nonprofit, and they're working with a pre-apprenticeship program that's we're looking to kind of learn more about what they're doing and how we can connect members of this group to make sure that everybody's aligned and we can provide these opportunities to students.
Great. Confluence Development, redevelopment, you're well aware of this project. We did send an RFQ for a master developer earlier this year. We received some technical assistance from the EPA in July. We're working on the 6F conversion for Vogler Park, and we're working on addressing zoning and plating around City Hall. So that's kind of what we're doing to move that forward. We're planning a meeting in 2020 to thoroughly review the EPA-funded technical assistance with City Council, and hopefully we'll have some other experts who do redevelopment work and work with us closely on this project to give you kind of an overview. I know that was something that Councilor Stepp was really interested in having us do, and then also we can go over those kind of performance numbers that we have from the area-wide. I talked a little bit about broadband already this evening, but we're working on the last mile expansion for service to residential customers. If that fiber to the home rollout will start early in next year. And right now, Sarah and Michael are working on kind of a new marketing campaign and new logo for broadband. So that will be ready kind of in the middle of this month. I'm working on putting out flyers so that we can reach the folks in the Six Canyon Oasis Creek project in that first quarter. So, where do we want to go from here? We have lots of recommendations that are in the plan, and I'll let Matt talk some more about this, but this is kind of where we really would like for you to weigh in I know that there's been a lot of interest from City Council. When are we going to have this opportunity to say, how do we move forward on economic development? I don't think that you have to answer that question this evening, but I think that we will want some additional direction on what of these priorities. I mean, it's a plan with 10 pages or more of recommendations, and so we can't do everything all at once. We've been really working hard this year to kind of prep for where else do you want to go.
Right, and to that end, I welcome you to please stop me, jump in, ask questions, provide your thoughts at any time. And if anything pops out to you, please let me know. But I will kind of go slowly through these to make sure you can glance at them. These were a set of 9 different, so I have 9 slides, 9 sets of recommendations essentially provided in our strategy last year, where we would like to focus seems too narrow when we have this many options, but where we would like to focus our efforts. And so to start, of course, affordable housing that affects everyone in the community and everybody that works here. So some of the ideas you can see listed, we would like to particularly focus on how we can work with others in the community, to what extent that looks like, how we can internally, how we can think about our current properties, our current regulations, whatever it may be, to provide affordable housing solutions for the.
So an important bullet here on this slide, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut you off, it's just that I know that there has been some conversation that councilors have been having about identifying city properties that could be used for affordable housing. The Iddings property that we recently purchased, and there's a little a small piece right at the corner of 8th and Midland that many of us have our ideas, staff ideas about what that property could be, but it's right at where the turn pocket is going on to Midland. So it is something that there has been at least a sketched out plan of what could fit potentially on that site. For both of these, we have to do some more analysis of how that would look. The Iddings property is not very deep. And when you factor in where a future road expansion could go and our regulations related to hillside preservation, you could probably only fit 2 units on the Iddings property.
Yeah, quick question. So here. Are you, Matt, I can't remember, are you part of the group of the Housing Commission and the Planning and Zoning? Were you there last time on what they're trying to do on housing, and and if not, would you be part of that group?
I'd be happy to.
If it's good with the rest of Kim.
I certainly want to remain informed of everything that it can be, so that's something that we'll certainly prioritize.
I think it would be helpful since these kind of follow into what they're talking about. Jen, you were there, right?
I was.
Yeah, okay.
There were a lot of folks there.
Yes, I know. But I was thinking the second one that.
I was hiding in Carl's seat.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, that was the thing.
Sorry, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt this.
Go ahead, I'll push my button.
Thanks. Rick?
Yeah, I'm really happy to see all of these possibilities that are out there and all the good work. And, again, Matt, welcome as being sort of a focal point for putting some of this stuff together. It's kind of startling to know that about 60 to 65% of all new jobs created in the United States won't require a bachelor's degree. But yet, we're all, saying, boy, if we don't have a bachelor's degree, we're basically not ready for the workforce. And so where I'm going with this is that a big sort of initiative in higher education, in a way, has been the whole idea of these career pathways, where you're sort of in school for a while, you're out of school, getting some credit, you're getting some experience, you're back in school, you're back out of school, and that might be, some sort of productive, if you'll pardon the pun, sort of pathway for us to maybe look at when we talk to a CMC or other providers that are doing higher education here in Glenwood. And I think that a lot of this economic development can't be completely city-driven. I mean, I think we've got to have partners, we've got to have people at the table We have to have, folks who are willing to, let's say, see themselves as part of a pathway. Because, right now we have a heavily service-oriented economy where it doesn't necessarily pay the rent, it doesn't necessarily provide a lot of educational uptake or extra dollars. And so the Starbucks model is kind of interesting, but I don't see a lot of businesses and employers in Glenwood being able to, sort of pay tuition as people are working there. So, maybe a creative partnership and the whole idea, that we can get somewhere with working together to make this happen. And so it can't be necessarily completely a city initiative. It's got to be, the people who are where the rubber meets the road, the jobs. That's where a lot of this needs to happen. So one last thing is, I'm kind of wondering, the revolving loan fund that we're talking about, have we had a lot of uptake with that, with businesses yet? I know we said November, December, but...
So it has not yet gone live. Because I have been in the process of creating that application and pulling together our committee members. We now have 6 committee members who will be meeting for the first time in January. So ideally, once that is underway, then I have the webpage created, and it's just a matter of kind of linking it to our active website and making it live. And have already had at least a few conversations with local businesses who have expressed an interest once it does go live.
So I think the whole meme of making some money available in businesses with a partnership, understanding that if they're investing in their employees and doing some professional development work sort of in-house, it's going to elevate all ships on the same level, maybe. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just had a quick question on this housing and construction. One of the other things that we've been talking about with P&Z and with the Housing Commission is city code changes, density bonus or kind of upzoning or things like that we might look at. That just might be another bullet to include here as part of it, but, and then hopefully we can talk more about those properties and, since they are city-owned properties, I don't know what the zoning is on everything, but as far as fitting units on them. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Maybe here I'm missing it, but infill, part of economic development, what are we doing for infill? That's one question. The second question is kind of, what are we doing, Jonathan kind of raised this at the last meeting, to look at trying to enhance development of properties where small retail businesses could be, spaces that we know could become an issue, since a number of them are going to be eliminated with the potential development between 9th and 10th. Do we have anything in here for that?
So I think that part of the reason why we pursued the application with the USDA for the revolving loan fund was to help businesses. A lot of times what we see, and it's mentioned in the economic development strategy, is that we have aging buildings that are not well suited without heavy investment for businesses to transition into those spaces. And so one of the things that revolving loan fund can help fund is some of those transitions businesses can make to other locations. It's possible, it's very difficult for these dollars to be used for actual construction, but there are other things that can help businesses by having this low interest money and more risk than some of your traditional lenders would be interested in terms of the lending. So it can help those smaller businesses actually move into another space. In terms of infill related to, for instance, the Safeway and the American Furniture Warehouse building, I do spend a lot of time talking to those workers, and I think that there's a lot of interest. This type of development moves very slowly, and it's partly because they're national entities. For instance, Safeway owns that property, and so Safeway is very deliberate in their thinking and their decision-making. So they told me, in March of last year that it would be a year before they made a decision. So I wouldn't expect a decision out of the Safe Waves to see what goes into that space until probably April of 2020. And maybe we'll just quickly go through this. I know that you guys said that we just have thrown a lot at you, but there are recommendations related to recreation industry growth opportunities, pursuing outdoor equipment manufacturers, continuing to support a robust guided tour industry. I know that we had a conversation about the paragliding folks wanting to do a ropes course, and they're a little bit on hold right now, but that's the kind of thing that we've been working to bring to you and to kind of support that kind of industry. Workforce development, we talked about the apprenticeship programs that we've been trying to work with those partners. As Councilor Voorhees mentioned, we don't think that we can do an apprenticeship program. That's not what we can do, but maybe we can support those efforts that are happening within the community and regionally. Maybe they need a little bit of financial support, maybe they need convening support. I know that there's lots of interest in this, but it may take a champion to move it forward. And then co-working and makerspace, this is something that is mentioned in the plan, and there are some ways that Jesse Silverstein suggested that we might be able to get there. But again, it's those challenges that we have with building stock that makes it difficult to do those kinds of things. And we don't have that many public buildings or land where we can have those shared space operators. Obviously, we talked a little bit tonight about moving all of those various divisions out of the MOC, and so having to purchase places. So we're not in a position to do that, but maybe there are other folks that we could work with in other creative ways that we could address that. Retention expansion, so that goes to your question, Charlie, about focus groups, convening people to talk about businesses, expanding businesses, working with those brokers, trying to figure out how to fill spaces, and then expanding light industrial base. One of the tougher recommendations is in the economic development strategy is discussing redevelopment of the Glenwood Springs Airport. I know that you have spent a lot of time with that, and there are lots of different options, but one of the things is that we lack in Glenwood is a lot of area for light industrial or business park, and the airport could, portions of that land could coexist with an airport with more light industrial business park if that was a way that City Council wanted to go. Obviously, there are a lot of decisions to make related to the airport. And then just positioning, continuing to do more to market and talk about the opportunities that are out there. We have talked about creating an organized realty listings resource that's on our website. Keeping it updated is something that will be challenging, but so that's something that we could do. And then there's additional focus area recommendations related to broadband, continuing to work with the chamber to have committees that can focus on some of these specific items. One of the things that we say in the plan here is that we are kind of lacking in mid-price hotel options that have some of those amenities. There's some information that's in the market study that's in the area-wide, talking about additional lodging opportunities. So something that we could pursue, continuing to collaborate on events and arts events in the community, continuing to focus on neighborhood-focused branding, those sorts of those things, and then also direct economic development incentives, and there will probably be some of those kinds of incentives that we will be bringing forward in the future as we relate to some of those bigger retail spaces. And I think that's it. It's a lot to throw at you guys. If there are specific items that you'd like us to focus on, I think I know that we still have a lot yet to do this evening, including an executive session, so we might leave it there. If you have specific items that you'd like us to focus on, in addition to the affordable housing, we'd be happy to do that.
Any questions for staff?
Okay, well, there's a presentation, but Christian?
Did we need any? No, sir. Mr. Mayor, did they need any direction, or we're just going to continue to come back?
What, are you looking for direction, or are you looking for
I think we can, I think we could have a work session at some point in the future. I know that there was a desire from some of the councilors to know what we were doing in terms of economic development, and a desire to have an opportunity for you to give us more focused input about how to move forward on some of these initiatives.
And thank you for this. There's a lot of information, because you guys do a lot of work. So thank you, and I think, at least for myself, I would love a work session where maybe there's some maybe more focus and specific asks for direction. Is that, or do we have direction tonight?
I think that's a good
I
idea.
think it's a good idea. And I think in that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Jen, I don't know why you need help.
I'm happy to go off, we're happy to go off on our own direction.
Why did you have to hire somebody?
Because I can't do all the things.
I think she's joking. No, please send her
And I think
No,
it's,
thank you very much. It's a lot of work you guys do.
and I think it's important to remember that, like, this is a program we're really building. You know, before I somehow hoodwinked Jen into taking the assistant city manager / economic development director, we didn't really have anyone focused on it. So I know it might feel sometimes like it's slower than what you want, but it's kind of like other things we're building from the top bottom. We built this from the top bottom because it wasn't really a focus for the city specifically before.
Well, it's amazing. Thank you.
And I just want to know, John, I think I mentioned this earlier, this concept of can we figure out zoning to try to encourage the development of small retail places, you know, in the downtown area, North Glenwood, those areas. I think we should be looking at that as it's not quite economic development, it kind of ties in.
I think that's a zoning, I agree. You know, Carl, could we talk maybe about that at the, if we have room on the next agenda? I know it's probably packed, but I'd love to have a conversation, and maybe it's a work session on.
Yeah, about kind of shifting zoning.
There you go.
Performance standards, that kind of thing. I honestly think, as you know, it's been kind of a busy week.
Sure.
No, where I was going with that is that, and you guys have a lot on your plate. I don't know if it'll be the next meeting.
Okay.
But definitely on the radar, and Jenna and I have been talking about that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love some options and have a work session on that.
Send it to the planning commission and wait to hear what they say.
No, yeah, I'll let you guys use your best judgment.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you guys very much.
Good job, well-rounded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 15, Colorado Municipal League discussion. We're behind schedule, so can we just vote on this and then move on?
I have a 40, no. Just seriously, a couple things I just want to bring attention. I went through this again today. Very little, they have made some changes from the draft I sent out a couple weeks ago. There's just some really good things in there, including economic development, other things on the policy. If you have any questions, I think I've gone through it. What I just a consensus from you, if you all kind of support this. I'm going to.
Need a vote, Charlie?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to go support this at the meeting tomorrow, assuming the roads are okay. I did get some items, and just again, real quickly, I'll do it fast because I know we're behind. They are looking at a bill in the legislature this year about housing, which is why I want to bring it to your attention, in which Colorado probably does 2000 Colorado Supreme Court prohibited the application of local land use authority for inclusionary zoning, claiming it's rent control. Really, they're trying to pass something to indicate that that is not rent control in violation of the Constitution, I think is what that is. So there's a bill there, one on building codes that's not significant. There is one on recall elections, which, you know, just, I think it's to clarify things. And there's one on family medical leave insurance that they're supporting, one on the fire and police pension funds. They're talking about an age restriction on vaping, but not restricting or eliminating flavored products at the state level. And then some water and wastewater bills that they are going to be introducing and have sponsors to do that. There's a number of other issues that are going to come up tomorrow, and I've gone through them. Nothing that directly relates to Glenwood that I think, but I will pay attention to it. I did talk to Carl a little bit the other day about this. I'm going to bring up at the, this is the policy committee, the ones that determine the legislation. I'm going to bring up the concept. I thought it was in the policy, but I couldn't find it when I reread it today, that some concept of allowing municipalities to have some control outside their boundaries for large sorts of maybe mineral developments, you know, where we have more authority.
Yeah,
So in that 3 mile kind of.
I think the concept we really talked about is we have a 3 mile planning area that is pretty soft in terms of what we can do in that 3 mile, and there are, you know, we get referrals with the county and things like that, but there is, with the exception of, you know, watershed regulations, there's really a limit on extraterritorial that affects the cities and local municipalities, and it would be nice to try to take a, if CML would take another look at bulking up the teeth that has in various areas that have direct impacts on municipalities.
So I did talk to the executive director and David Broadwell, the attorney for the CML at the conference this summer, and they know we're interested in this issue. They know kind of what's going on, but I'm going to raise it in the overall policy committee. It's people from out the state, so hopefully that'll help bring some other attention.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because especially towns that are so surrounded by public lands, being able to influence that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at particularly the western slope of Colorado, almost every community is fully engulfed by public, or a large portion of their boundaries are going to be touching public lands.
There are some things in the policy statement that deal with those issues slightly, and not as strong again as we'd like, but they do address them slightly. So.
Okay.
So any question or anything, I'd be happy to answer. I stayed there 3 minutes. How's that?
Great.
I appreciate that. No, I think, Charlie, if you've read through this and you feel comfortable with this, and it comes from CML, it's not like they're you know, an agency that we're not partners and, you know, with, then I will trust your interpretation, and you don't need a vote, so that's fine, but
Good luck. Are you going to Denver tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning. The meeting starts at 10 tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Everybody generally supportive of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Jordan.
Yep, cool. Thank you very much, Charlie. And thank you for doing that. It's great to have a voice in CML. All right, city administration, city manager report.
Okay. It's been a week. Just, I think I've already emailed you this, but I'll be out of town all of next week for the National Brownfields Conference.
So doing multiple presentations whilst there.
Yes, doing 2 presentations while there.
Great,
So,
thank you.
should be fun.
Are they going to be filmed? Do we get to see them later?
Oh, no. Jonathan saw me do one at the last one.
Oh, you beat this woman from Kalispell down. Oh my gosh. It was a competition, and it was like homeless children, like, who were criminals in Kentucky, and Deborah, and this one from Kalispell. And it was a tough room. It was a real tough room. But you did great. You held your own.
So Jen will be here.
Yes, Jen and Steve will be here. And I haven't talked to them about which one is going to be sacrificed, and so we'll negotiate that.
Thank you for going to that.
And you know, as you know, the search is, you know, the interview is on. I'm hoping to have made a decision next week, but I don't know for sure. But I'll keep you guys in the loop. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Carl?
The mayor was concerned that there was not enough information at these meetings, so I prepared a short presentation regarding the intricacies of the legislative update and some, no, I don't really have anything tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I want to hear about the legislative.
Legislative update, yeah.
I love those.
Yeah, no, they're always good. I mean, I do too. I just plagiarized David Broadwell's because he always does a great one. But
Yeah, maybe we could have that at a work session.
Correspondence incoming, outgoing. everybody has the, and it is public now, the email or the letter from Scott Tipton.
Yeah, it's on the front page of the Post Independent website right this second.
Okay. Yeah. So I probably don't need to read it, but I do want to say that there was a lot of effort by staff and by members of this community to have their voice heard, and that kind of thing is instrumental. When people ask, what can I do, what can I do in this community? People ask me that all the time. People want to be empowered. And I say, join the Citizens Alliance, write a check, call your congressman. And those things are happening, and because of that, we're hopefully going to be, we have pushed and pressured the BLM to change the drilling plan, which was going to be a category exclusion, to a environmental assessment, which is, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And so our voices have made a difference, and thank you.
Yeah, they haven't made that decision yet, obviously.
Right.
They haven't made any decision.
Right.
We believe one is forthcoming. And by staff, just so you guys are really clear, that means Deborah. Like, she spent yesterday on the phone in the middle of everything else that's going on, calling congressional offices, talking to community leaders, and Jonathan following up on all of those things. So
Great.
I really want to make sure you recognize that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Deborah.
Great to have this on the front page.
Okay, now we can move into, are we moving into work session now, or I thought we were going to do executive session and then work session?
You can flip it either way. It probably makes sense to do the exec session next if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, let's dismiss
Can I
every...
read it?
Yes, you may. Do you have it in front of you? Yeah, let's just get everybody dismissed, and we're going to go into executive session.